Let me tell you the story of two brothers, FTP and TFTP. These two brothers lived in the land before time, often known as the 1980s. Both of them grew up and left their parents' home at the same time. FTP, however, was the responsible one. He headed to the cobblestone roads of TCP communication, and he built his home on those roads, which were safe and secure and well tread by many applications before him. As a matter of fact, he even had a security wall in front of his home, because it's very easy to build a security wall when you're building on top of stone. As a matter of fact, I believe his address was 21 West TCP Lane. TFTP, on the other hand, was a bit more irresponsible. He had very big eyes for the land of California, where he saw the shifting sands of the beaches and the waves crashing over it. So he decided to go down and build his home at 69 East UDP Drive. Most of the time, the house stood firm. However, there was the occasional rocking of the boat and the shifting of the sands, and the entire house would fall over. Of course, he could never put a security wall in front of his house, because you cannot build a security wall on sand. Now, when the network vendors produced their equipment and said, "You know what? We need to use one of these brothers in order to upgrade our operating system," it was very tempting to head the direction of TFTP, because it was so easy. There would be no need for a username and password to get past that gate. There was no gate. They could simply walk through the door and access whatever files they needed. However, over time, people began to realize that the more responsible boy was probably a better direction to go. Yes, you would need to type in a username and password, but you could drive your car much faster because you're not driving on the sand. And that's pretty much the entire lesson of TFTP and FTP. But at least now I can stop talking like this, because I'm going to lose my voice. Network devices. Oh man, that hurt. I don't know why I did that. Network devices use one of these protocols very often for file operations. That is, when you're trying to upgrade the iOS on one of your devices, or copy it off for backup, or do any other kind of file transfer, like you're trying to back up your configuration to a server. You can use either TFTP or FTP. They're protocols that do the same thing, transfer files. TFTP, UDP-based over port 69 UDP, allows you to do it without any requirement for a username and password, any requirement for even a session. But, as we all know, things without reliability need to have reliability, right? Especially if you're transferring sensitive files like an operating system, the iOS, or a configuration file. So instead of having TCP be the check for the file transfers over TFTP, they had to build acknowledgments on top of it. Literally, the people who created TFTP as a protocol to transfer files over UDP had to build their own reliability in at the application layer. Because of that, it's a lot slower. And that's because every single packet that's sent has to get an acknowledgement that's sent back, all handled up at the application layer. The beauty of UDP is that you can use it without any requirement for authentication. So you're on this guy and you just set up a server. And by the way, just go to Google, type in TFTPD32, all one word. There is a guy out in France, a professor, who created a Windows application that makes it so easy to run a TFTP server, a syslog server, an FTP server, all in one little app that you can just run on your Windows computer. So cool. So you can set up that TFTP server on your laptop, on your server, whatever you want to do, and simply copy files to and from it from a Cisco device. FTP, however, has turned out to be a little more reliable and a lot faster. The drawback of it, and I'm not even going to say it's a drawback, because it's just stuff you have to configure, right? Is that FTP requires authentication. You have to go on your Cisco device and type in, when you're copying files, what is the username, what is the password over to the FTP server, and you have to go on the FTP server and set that up. But the good news is you'll be rewarded with reliable and a lot faster file copies to and from your Cisco devices. So to review, TFTP and FTP are two protocols that you can use to copy files. One thing I want to show you. I just want to log into a router real quick. I'll do a show flash. And if I was going to back up my operating system, I would do a copy flash colon C1900 blah, 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 to, and then I would say it's going to go to, and this is where I was saying, you can either use TFTP, and I can choose that protocol, 10.1.1.1 / file name. I'll just put file.name, right? Or I could use TFTP as a file transfer protocol. Now you're looking here, you can see there's all kinds of other ones. SCP is a common Linux one, but unless you're working off a Linux workstation, often not available in the Windows world. HTTP, HTTPS, often a read-only. So if you're downloading from a website to install an operating system or some configuration file, that works well. But as a to-from protocol, usually TFTP and FTP are the ones that you're going to use. So my primary goal and the whole purpose of my story was to stick in your head where you would use TFTP and FTP in the day in, day out life of network operation. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.